Today we are going ancient old school to learn some of Aristotle's best speaking tips, which to this day can be found everywhere. We're going to analyze a speech I made at my grandmother's funeral last week and find lots of examples of ethos, pathos, and logos. Join us. Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Kevin. I'm an English teacher and writer who is very pleased to share all my best speaking and writing tips with you. If you feel that you are benefiting in any way, shape, or form from these videos, don't be shy about clicking that subscribe button. I put together a little website called kevindonor.com. It's really devoted to teaching and writing. You will see that because I have a lot of projects that are still coming together, it doesn't have that much at the moment. It is a work in progress, but there are handouts for every video on there, so you can check out that supplementary material and it'll just give you something to study from and practice from if you like. This website will be growing and improving all the time, and you can check it out for the latest information about book releases and some of the online classes that I offer as well. Today we are looking at the timeless tips of one of the greatest philosophers, mathematicians, scientists of all time. We're talking about the Greek great Aristotle, whose methods and tips are old, but they are, as we say, timeless, which means they are good forever. We are talking all about Aristotle's rhetoric, which is nearly 2,500 years old. Yet, it is timeless. Rhetoric is everywhere, in stories, in ads, on social media, in speeches, news articles. Everywhere you look, people are still using Aristotle's key techniques of rhetoric. We're also going to be analyzing a speech that I just gave at my grandmother's funeral about a week ago and finding lots of great examples of ethos, pathos, and logos. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is rhetoric? Simply put, rhetoric is the art of persuasion. Almost simply put. So, what is persuasion? Well, persuasion, to persuade, is to convince or to make someone believe and support what you are saying. We can convince people to change the way they think or to change the way they act. In this world, you never know where you're going to find inspiration. Words can inspire you to change your life. Or, as I've mentioned before, when language is used most effectively, you might strike a chord so deeply that you inspire them to make great changes to this world. It's possible, guys. Now, when we're talking about rhetoric, that is the art of persuasion or convincing people, it really relies on strong examples and reasoning. You're too kind. For our study goals and tips in this class, we want to first understand the meaning of ethos, pathos, and logos. Next, we want to be able to identify or pick out ethos, pathos, and logos in articles, in speeches, ads, or other places. After that, we want to be able to interpret or analyze ethos, pathos, and logos and give reasons for why they are effective in a certain context, in certain situations, however they are used. After that, we want to experiment and play around with using ethos, pathos, and logos for other topics. Say I give you a random topic like shopping, and you want to convince someone to buy something for you, perhaps. Maybe you can use these elements. And finally, after we've built up and practiced and gained this knowledge, we want to apply it, coming up with a 2-minute speech that uses these rhetorical devices. Let's first start with defining these Greek terms. Ethos, which is similar to ethics, is convincing people because you have experience or through your own ideas or ideals, that is, moral values concerning what is right or what is wrong. For instance, if we're talking about disciplining or teaching children what's right or wrong, you might say, well, I've been teaching for 20 years, and from my experience, I would say that yelling at students is ineffective because it only makes them angry or afraid. You might also use ethos from a parental perspective. Well, I have 10 children. I don't. And I've learned that spanking children is not effective because it also makes them either angry or afraid. Pathos is convincing your audience by making them feel sympathy, feeling sorry for someone or something that's happening, or empathy is just, again, making them feel. While the Greek word pathos is based on feelings of sadness and suffering, I also feel that basically pathos can be an emotional appeal. So whether you tap into feelings of sorrow or happiness, I think that's all related to pathos. For instance, it's important to donate money to the homeless because if we don't, they could starve or freeze to death during the long cold winter. Logos is quite simply convincing your audience using logic or facts. You might say the fast fashion industry is harmful to the environment because 92 billion tons of textile waste ends up in landfills every year. Moving right along. My grandmother lived a long, full life, and we just held a funeral for her. She passed away a few months ago, so I had done most of my grieving then. And she lived a long, full life. And there's nothing more we could possibly ask for. She was 95 years old. Imagine that, being old for over 30 years. That's quite something. And she was a really special woman. I was very privileged to be able to give a short speech at her funeral, which was held last weekend. And I want to use that speech so that we can analyze it and find lots of examples of ethos, pathos, and logos in there. I've always believed that perspective is very important. My grandmother instilled within me a positive attitude that has helped me to see the cup of life as always being at least half full. Have you ever met an old person that didn't complain? Or a young person? Or anyone for that matter? My grandmother was truly this person. She never spoke a bad word about anybody, And she always projected this shining positivity throughout her life. My grandmother grew up in the Great Depression, and she would often tell stories about how she had to ride a horse a mile to her classroom. This was a time when the ladies would wear potato sacks as dresses. My grandmother was raised strong. Throughout her life, she remained a pillar of support for her children, her foster children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren. Can you imagine living in your 90s and experiencing COVID, Trump, strokes, falls? Can you imagine being in your 90s and still cooking, cleaning for yourself, gardening, rearranging furniture? My grandmother was the most independent person I have ever met. She did things for herself up until the last month of her life. She never wanted to bother anyone. My grandmother always told me that everything happens for a reason. I think this is a great lesson because whenever we're in the heart of struggle, we can't see how that experience will make us stronger or what we will gain from it. I want to thank my grandma for being my one and only grandma. I want to thank her for always welcoming me into her home and teaching me that life is too short to worry about things you can't control or to live in fear of anything. I want to thank you, Grandma, for teaching me that everything happens for a reason. So as long as we try our best, then it will all work out in the end. Okay, let's get down to business and start to analyze this speech. It begins with perspective. Very important. Perspective is how we look at things. We also hear the cup of life is always at least half full. These relate to ethos. But I'm not building up my character to convince you of anything. I'm building up my grandmother's character, and I'm stressing the importance of her outlook and her ethics. Have you ever met an old person that didn't complain? Or a young one? Or anyone for that matter? Is this ethos, pathos, or logos? It has elements of logos because it really is a fact that you rarely meet an individual that doesn't complain. It doesn't matter if they're young or old, wherever you go. And I wanted to kind of stress that. And it may sound like I'm exaggerating and making the fish bigger than it was, but I can honestly tell you I've never heard my grandma really complain about anything, not even the weather. And that it's almost unbelievable, but it's true. At the same time, we are building ethics, ethos again. We're stressing the fact that, again, she has this positive outlook. My grandmother was raised in the Great Depression, a time when she had to ride a horse a mile to her classroom, and the women would even wear potato sacks as dresses. Ding, ding, ding! If you said pathos, you are correct. We're not feeling sorry for my grandmother, but we are emphasizing that she grew up during difficult times. She was raised strong and remained strong. She remained a pillar of support for her children, her foster children, 8 foster children. Wow. her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren. So we're getting back into ethos again. We're getting into her strong moral character, how she was always there for her family. And what you can really see here, I think the most important takeaway from this is that pathos, convincing our audience by using suffering, leads into ethos. And how does it do that? Well, it shows us that getting through hard times makes us stronger and teaches us strong moral values. So where do we go from here? Imagine being in your 90s and living through COVID, Trump, stress, strokes. My grandma had some mini strokes. Falls. When you're over 90 and you fall, that can be it for you sometimes. The body is so fragile. These examples are using what rhetorical device? Pathos again. We're looking at her struggle and the fact that she's strong. Living through 2 years of COVID in your 90s, that would be very, very frightening. But she made it. She made it for sure. And where do we go from here? Imagine being in your 90s and cooking, cleaning, gardening, doing everything for yourself. So once again, we kind of go from the pathos, the fact that she survived tough times, not only as a child, but as an old woman. She got through COVID and Trump and all that. And then she's still independent. She still doesn't want to bother anybody. So we go from pathos to ethos. Grandmother always taught me that everything happens for a reason. Is this ethos, pathos, or logos? I think you got it. It's ethos again. We're building these moral values to be positive and to believe that everything has its purpose. And again, that we have to kind of get through the struggles before we can see how they make us stronger. I think I'll leave the rest of the speech up to you. Take a look at it and see if you can find more examples of ethos, pathos, and logos. We have a few questions to follow up with. Which rhetorical device out of ethos, pathos, and logos is used the least in this speech, and why? Number 2, can you find more examples of ethos, pathos, and logos in this speech? Number 3, is there a rhetorical device that you might have used more of if you were making a speech like this? Maybe you want to use pathos a little more. It's all up to you. And the last question, which part of this speech did you enjoy most, or did you feel was most effective? Okay, moving on to our daily exercise. Take a random topic. Maybe one of the new else topics, if you can find them, which you can. Just go online, anywhere you'll find them. Take a new else topic and speak about it for 2 minutes using ethos, pathos, and logos. One thing I should mention, guys, no one's perfect, but as Kobe Bryant always said, we're always chasing perfection. And in order to do that, you need to practice regularly. Make sure you're getting in about 15 minutes of practice daily if improving your speaking and writing is something you are very serious about. And on that note, keep recording yourself. It's very important that you record and even type up, transcribe some of your answers. Take the time to look at them and break them down and see again if you have complex grammar structure, if you're using multiple tenses, collocations, idiomatic expressions, all of these elements that we've been building up in each video, you want to go back and make sure that you have a list and you want to make sure that you are adding them to this list. This list is going to continually be growing as we make our climb, our ascent up the mighty mountain, the mighty Everest of English speaking and writing. I want to thank you so very, very much for checking out this video, sticking with it, and practicing your English speaking and writing with me. If this has moved you in any way, or you feel that you've improved, don't be shy. Feel free about subscribing and ringing that bell. Also, leave your comments below. I'll get back to you ASAP. Let's keep learning and growing together. It is truly a wonderful thing. I'll see you guys again real soon. Have a good one.